do think it's appropriate that we should have planned to record this on Monday
Tell me why.
because it was St. Patrick's Day.
It was?
And our podcast is called Lucky
Lucky
13 Podcast, All Things People in Profit and Business. So I'm Mike Lantz, one of your hosts.
I'm Josh Hauser, and I wore green shoes and a green shirt on Monday, just so you know.
Well, you would have won the best dress then because I wore
you.
zero green on Monday. I'm not sure I even own any green.
I'm
Ever
a
since the Irish took down my Hoosiers in the college football playoffs, I'm not sure I think I got rid of them.
That was a rough takedown.
Yeah, so this is the inaugural episode of season 2 of our podcast. We've kind of been on a little bit of a break. We've had a lot of life stuff going on.
Great stuff.
I know we've said that a couple of times, but this is officially season 2.
And you
so
look slim. I know I know you've been working on your diet, working on your exercise, but you got what we like to call the spring break flu, which is how you get that flu and you just flush out all the water and then you rub some baby oil on your abs and go sit at the beach. I know that's why you got it. You're saying you were sick. You were just trying to get for spring break. I know what you're doing.
Josh, that has never happened at any point in time in my life. So way to disclose what you're...
that's not the pictures I have.
Yes, I was deathly ill last week.
Which is why we have
3
Gatorade
days.
on site.
So this episode is brought to you by Gatorade Electrolyte version.
Follow us. We need some sponsorship.
Yes, it is. I was really sick. I think I had the norovirus. Is that
what it's called?
Told. And it's the sickest I've ever been. I remember we were supposed to record last Tuesday.
We were.
And I rolled over into my bed about 5:30 in the morning. I know I was thinking about you.
You FaceTime me.
And I did not.
Okay.
But I text you and I'm like, I feel like death and there's no way I'm going to be here today. So I've still got the lingering cough. So if I cough a little bit, then hopefully everybody will be
good.
all right
If you
with
could just give it to me because I'm not going on spring break, but I got some pants that aren't fitting right. So a little norovirus.
So what's going on in the Hauser household these days?
Everybody's doing great. Kids are doing great. Mama's doing great. Mama's sick. I think she has a norovirus. So we got that going on at the house. But yeah, everybody's just, we're ready for Easter. We're going to get them all home for Easter. So got them home for Christmas. We're getting them home for Easter. So that's the exciting part. How about you?
Everybody seems to be doing really, really well. We actually were excited about this summer. We with everybody kind of all spread out, all 5 of them, they're kind of all doing their own thing. We decided once a summer we're going to book a place, Julie and I, somewhere, and then if the kids want to come in for a vacation, then they can come in.
Love it.
And so we decided we're going to Gatlinburg. So we rented this cool cabin.
When are you going to Gatlinburg?
The June 30th through July 6th.
We're there 18th through the 25th. So we'll get it warmed up for you.
All right, sweet. And so we're just, if anybody wants to come, so we found this really sweet cabin with a pool and a hot tub and built-in bears and all that kind of stuff.
Oh my gosh, we could have a Lucky 13 podcast there on our last day.
Oh, that'd be good. Yeah, I like it. Let's do it.
No? Okay.
Well, we could.
Let's get into some topics. What are we going to talk about today?
Well, first off, you had asked me leading up to this, what's the latest book I've read? So every year, there's a book called The Rhythm of Life by Matthew Kelly. Matthew Kelly is like this prodigy. He's written like dozens of books. He's one of those like John Maxwell, John Gordon guys that writes a ton of books. He wrote this book when he was like 28 years old called The Rhythm of Life. And I remember reading it the very first time thinking, there's no way this cat's 28 years old writing this book. He just was so reformed and old soul. And so ultimately the book, I read it every year in January, okay? And January into February. And it really talks about how to become the best version of yourself. And in all aspects of your life, right? It does have a spiritual foundation to it, but it's really about this idea that God put you on this planet to do a specific thing with specific gifts, and how much of your time are you spending leaning into those specific gifts and having that impact on people and companies or whatever that they put you on.
Sounds like a familiar conversation.
Yeah, 100%. So that's the one I've most recently read. How about you?
Well, let me go back to that real quick because this is why I love asking that question. Because what we're finding out, we're all things people and process. People and profit, right? Yeah. There's a process that comes about which rules, tools, and disciplines. And the fact that you read something every year just to make sure you get that reset is like, that's the consistency that a lot of us lack. I see this in a lot of the companies that I work with and get to be around, is that oftentimes we just skip that. It works so well, we stop doing it. Let's go back and just do a reread. And so to your question, I'm rereading Think Again by Craig Rochelle. And it's
Think Ahead,
I'm sorry. Which is all about how do I start making decisions before I have to make a decision? How do I set the framework for my life so that when I have to make a decision, first of all, I have it categorized, and most of my decisions are pre-made because I've already decided how I'm going to make decisions.
There's already a filter built.
They're already built. You're screened down, and now I don't have 5 options. I have 1 or 2, and the hell yes, hell no really pops in.
Yeah. So tell me more about
how
they think about that.
The things that they really think about, and what I'd love to talk about today, I brought this How to Make Decision Matrix, is first of all, your core values and your core focus, when those are set, which we've talked about a lot of times, really help when the decision has to be made. You already have your filter if you have that set. And to even think about what it could or couldn't do, you should already put that filter on it, and the answer becomes very clear. Right. I use Bagger Vance if you ever seen the movie Bagger Vance, when he sees the yellow line on the putt. That's how I see when decisions are made. The yellow line's already there. Just hit the putt at the right speed and it'll follow. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah.
The other thing, he does tie it to some biblical principles, which I appreciate, because he ties how there are words that are already said, but he gives little phrases throughout the book just to remember. And that's the part. To remember a whole book is hard, but to remember those little phrases was critical for me. And then I wanted to say, okay, how do I apply that to the daily, which is what we brought today to go over, which is how do we put those decisions into the chart so I make them in the proper order? Because there is decisions I need to make today and decisions I don't need to make right away. And we get distracted on when and when.
Yeah. Let me take you back to a second. You talked about core values and core focus. I think everybody knows what core values are. But break down core focus just real quick for
so core focus is when you wake up every day, to your point of the book Rhythm of Life. When you put your shoes on, what are you going to do? What is your unique ability? What are you accomplishing for the day? What we like to call, instead of going to work, we go to purpose. And so when my core focus wake up every day is to reach, teach, and eliminate. When I know that's what I'm waking up to do every day, then I'm not going to work. And all my decisions come through a filter of, is this going to help me reach a person, teach a person, eliminate an obstacle for somebody? And if it's not, then it's a no. Yeah. Does that make sense? And then the back half of this is how you do it, which is the niche. Different conversation, different day. But it's really starting with why you wake up. So what wakes you up every morning except for 5:30 in the morning last Tuesday?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's great that you bring that up, because the book Rhythm of Life really sparked something for me.
Okay.
So years ago, this was in 2006. Yeah, 2006.
Okay.
1996. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Good night.
1996. I was engaged to be married.
Okay.
And like 4 weeks before the wedding, I get this call from my fiance, and she goes, "I need to talk to you."
Oh no.
Yeah. So I drive over to her apartment, and I notice when I walk in, there's no ring on her finger. And I'm like, what's going on? And she basically says, "Mike, you're already married." And I was like, "What are you talking about? I'm not married. Like, who to?" And she said, "Your job." And she was accurate. I was addicted to my job. I was a workaholic, the whole thing. And I went through this process over the course of a couple of years with an executive coach to really find out, why am I here? Mm-hmm. And I really determined at that point in time that the reason I'm here is to be able to coach and inspire and motivate people to become the best version of themselves. And that is kind of the path that I've been on my entire career. That's why I married the person that I married. That's why we made the decision to have 5 kids and adopt 3 of them. Yeah. And it's the reason that I chose the profession that I'm in, the whole thing. And then I ran into this book of Rhythm of Life a few years after that, and it kind of supported that whole piece. But I think once you have that idea of why you're here and what that focus is, whether it's for your business or for you personally, I think then life becomes so much easier, because you just when you run into a challenge, you just run it through that filter, and the decision's already made for you.
Does anybody at home ever think that, although we think we're doing a podcast, it's really just Mike coaching me for a little bit? Do you ever notice that, Chris? It's just like he's seen it in my soul. I just read in B 2.0 by Jim Collins that if you live your life full of options, that's what you'll have, a life full of options. Yeah. And so how do you just get clear? So I used, if I want to diet, there's options to go eat. Yeah. There's Burger King, and there's Seasons 52. If I have made my decision, if I've made my core focus that I want to have a physique like Mike Lantz, Season 52 is where I got to go. Does that make sense?
I don't know about that.
Okay, but okay. You see what I'm saying? And so that's what the core focus does for you. I don't want to say it eliminates options. It just clears up what options you have.
100%. And I think, I don't know, I'm a simpleton. Like I'm a minimalist. I wear the same thing pretty much every day. I have many versions of this, but so I like to go to my closet and not have to make a lot of decisions, right? And I kind of am the same way in life. And maybe it's because I'm a little tempted by
it's a good call
by things or I don't know, but by keeping the decision process really, really simple and always relying on that, then it's allowed me to keep my life, I think.
What I heard you just say is you know yourself and you've created ways to protect yourself.
I think so. Yeah. I think that's probably it. I think we're all, as humans, I think we're all, flawed in some way, and we're one bad decision away from destruction and ruin. Yeah. And I think, especially entrepreneurs in this world.
Absolutely.
Like the visionary entrepreneur, they get distracted by really cool things.
Absolutely.
And
all the time.
A lot of times it's the really cool thing that destroys your business. Right?
Correct.
Because you don't stay focused. So
yeah, 100%. It takes you off of that core focus.
yeah, I think that's this isn't what we're talking about.
No,
but I think that's
love
one
this
of the.
conversation.
I think it's one of the values of having the integrator in the EOS model, for example. The integrator is the person that really should be responsible for running ideas and things through that company filter.
Yeah, I was just at the U.S. conference. We're kind of changing gears, but I love it.
Yeah.
I was at the U.S. conference, national conference, just amazing. 800 of me walking around nerding out.
This was for
rocks.
the implementers.
For implementers,
right.
yeah. The national conference for everybody else is in D.C. in April.
Yeah.
This was just implementers. So just think about a bunch of people walking around in orange talking to each other. And just in one of my breakouts, somebody described the integrator as I call it the spaghetti strainer, but the strainer, because the visionary goes in and sees gold in the river and scoops all of it up. And the integrator shifts through it until they actually find the little gold pieces, if you can picture that shifting. But that integrator has to have that discipline and that logic and not get emotional about what's going to strain through that they might not get to really focus on what the gold is in the room. Because visionaries find gold, but they find a lot of other things go with it that are shiny but might not be gold.
Yeah, 100%.
Does that resonate?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So let's dive into this model, how to
Please.
make decisions faster. So bring us up to speed on where this came from and start leaning into this.
Yeah,
and
so
we'll ask you some
new book,
questions.
real quick, new book out from EOS is Data Book.
Yeah.
It's good. It's a good replay of how your scorecard and measurables fit into the EOS world. But inside that, there was a couple clear things I pulled out, and I pulled this from one of my teammates, was how do we get our decisions made faster and, more importantly, made in the right order? So I see that when we do what we call IDS, problem solving. We'll solve the easy ones that don't mean anything, or during the day we'll get distracted and not solve. And so how do we start to quadrant it? And, I love quadrants and anything that I can tie together in a mathematical sense. So if we're picturing this at home, I want you to think about the vertical axis. Think about the word stakes. How important is it? What's the will it cause a major issue if we don't get that done? And then urgency, put the time to it. And so you just think about the words time and importance and level those together.
Yeah.
Following so far?
Yep.
And so if we just think about time and importance, the low time and importance takes initiative and decide on your own. This is the stuff we would need to start delegating. If we're not creating leaders of leaders, if we're not getting our teams to be able to make the decisions on the low time, low urgency, that they can make that decision, you're just going to be bombarded with stacks of paper that you're making decisions asking what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Good so far?
Yeah, so low stakes, low urgency, take initiative and decide on your own. That's a team member doing that.
Correct.
Like you don't have to run that up the flagpole, whatever. You make the decision on your own.
And you can set some rules, tools, and disciplines. I love, give you an example. Rich Charles, how do they do that? Rich Carlton.
Yeah.
How do they do that? They will give you a $250 limit.
Yeah.
And you don't need to check with anybody.
That's right.
That is what they're saying. That's a low standard, low timing. You got a $250 limit. Do that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you so far?
Yeah.
Now let's go to that far side. Now the stakes are getting higher. All right. But the time is not important. It's not due for 3 weeks. It's not due for 4 weeks.
Right. So high stakes, low urgency.
And so what we want to do is start teaching our team, don't bring me the problem, bring me a plan. Bring me I use Brian Neal on this. What are the 3 to 4 options now that you give me the relevant information that you see that we could operate under? And what we're doing is we're teaching our team how to think in that urgent model, but they have time now where they're not compressed and make bad decisions. They can go through the relevant information background. Does that make sense to you? And at the same token, what I think is a missing question that we don't ask, and Brian Neal again points this out, what are you leaning to when they bring you that plan? Don't just have them bring you the 4 options. Ask them, what are you leaning to?
Yeah.
Because we want to see how their decision process is working, because we want to move everybody, one step over if we can.
Yeah.
Does that resonate so far?
Yeah.
Good?
Yeah.
All right. Any suggestions on that one?
No, I think the whole idea of the what are you leaning to is an important piece of this, because I find so much of the time when I'm working with organizations is their employees are really great at, or team members are really great at identifying a problem, coming up with some solutions, but they're a little bit nervous to propose what they might do.
Fearful of being wrong.
And I think that's a trust issue inside of an organization, because they're like, what if I reveal something and they judge me for it or something like that? So how do you work through that?
Yeah, I'm working with a company right now that says, look, you're going to fail. Let's just fail fast. Let's not fail looking at it, thinking about it, and strategizing about it. Come with your plan. Tell me what your thinking is. And sometimes as a leader, you might say it's worth them going to make this mistake to go through that. If you see it's not a high priority, it's not going to hurt the profit or people situation. And the same token, what I see companies do is, let me ask you a couple questions before you do that. Rather than tell them they're wrong, get curious and help them discover that option 2 is where they should have gone, even though they're leading option 3. And it's just the wisdom that you might have as a leader that's helping them unlock that.
Yeah, and so understanding, like, where are you leaning? Well, I'm leaning towards option 3. Share with me why that's the case. And then asking questions that maybe reveals a little bit of flawed to their thought
and
process.
I love it. And you don't ask that why question we talked about before, because why is going to make them defend it.
Yeah.
I don't want them to defend it. I want them to dig into it. I want them to go a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
I got a cup now that says dig them. Get into the roots. Weed is cheap. We got to get into the roots. That should be a T-shirt for spring break, by the way. But we got to get into the root. And so way we as leaders get into the root on those is we ask a couple more questions. We don't give a couple more suggestions.
Yeah.
That makes sense so far?
Yeah. So when we think about low urgency and low stakes, then we want people to just take initiative and decide on their own. And we need to give them some guardrails as to where that flies in. And then if it's still low urgency but higher stakes, then you're going to propose a plan. Come with 3 or 4 options to solve this problem. And then it's incumbent upon the leader to kind of then pull out of them and tease out of them what they think would be the appropriate way to do it and their rationale behind it and kind of dig into that a little
100%.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so now we got a low priority. It's not really overly important, but we need to make that decision right away. Okay? And so the way we think about that is I need that decision made. I can't stop everything I'm doing to get that decision, but I need to stay informed of what's going on with that. So as you're making the decision, you need to be a little bit more bouncy with me, a little bit more, if you want to call it a CB or thing. I always think the headsets, we're talking to the quarterback, just quickly giving some feedback, and the OC or head coach are having quick conversations just to keep the offense flowing. Yeah. Does that resonate to you?
Yeah, it does. It starts to, and I think it'll play with this last coordinate as well, is the idea of a RACI document.
There it is. Okay. I love it.
So RACI document, for those of you who don't know what that is R stands for who's responsible for it. A stands for who's accountable, like who are we going to hold accountable. C stands for what, is it something that just needs to be communicated to somebody?
And I oftentimes throw in also who needs to be consulted on this.
Consulted, right. And then I is informed, like who just needs to be informed. And so really getting clear, I could see a RACI document flying over this as well to really understand that.
And as a leader, you probably want to sit in that C and I on that state.
Yeah.
It's a low priority. You're in the consulted, informed state, not in the responsible state. And so that's so important. Just keep me communicated, keep me informed. Yeah. But I know you can make this decision, but I'm going to see how now we've gone from take your time, think about it, to now we need to make it a little bit quicker. The one has a large impact, the other one doesn't.
Yeah. Good. Love it. Okay. And then upper right,
that's
high urgency, high stakes.
Got to bubble it up. We got to work on that now. That's IDS if you're an EOSer. The term that I've been using a lot lately is what's the issue, why is it significant, what is the outcome we need? If we just start with those 3 principles, because the timeline is now said it's compressed, we need to dig in. I find too many teams turn this into a discussion and not into what are we actually solving. So that part of significance is critical. I want to take a second on that. Is when I bring an issue that is urgent and high stakes, I need to know, okay, what is the issue in 1 to 2 sentences and why is it significant? We miss that part because we might be selling for something that we don't know what the significance is. And so we might just be dismissive or over anxious on it. We need to get to what the significance is. And then rather maybe than having them have the options at that point, ask them what's the outcome we're looking for. So you got a customer who's upset. We got to settle that customer who's upset. I got Joni's sick and I need to fill that spot. Okay. Now we still want to get them to having options, but now we're speeding up their options. But as a leader, we're probably thinking this is my time to step in and make some of these answers.
Yeah. And so as you've been working with clients around these, I've got a couple ideas too. Where do you think the biggest mistakes happen?
Yeah, well, a couple things is that my leaders, my visionaries and integrators are doing all 4. That's one of the things I see. They feel like my role is
they actually are a decision
they're making all decisions, and then what they frustrate is that I spend all day making everybody's decisions, and so it's a little bit of the delegating that has to go through that, which is also doing some self-search of what your rules, tools, and disciplines that you want to apply. Second is I don't think anybody tracks what their time is on. So what I did in the last meeting I had, I said, take me your last 2 weeks, pull out your L10s, which has all the issues. Where did they fit on this chart if we were to look at it? And I find they always fit in the top quadrant of high proposed or the bottom right. Very little fit in here because most teams are really getting teams to get that decision made. But they're not really spending the 20% to drive 80% in that bubble up, if that makes sense. The high stakes immediate, because that's what leaders get paid for, in my opinion. That your wisdom makes you make decisions faster, one of the tough decisions. Everybody else can start solving the others. So I want to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. When I think back through just the last 3 or 4 months with some clients, I think that I've seen businesses struggling to bubble it up right away. They're bubbling it up, but they're not being decisive.
Correct.
And so they're kicking major decisions down the road. There's been a couple of clients, there's been some softening in their business. And they're kind of saying, hey, maybe we should make some staffing changes. Or maybe we should make some changes in some of the vendors we're working with or whatever. And it tends to be a topic that's brought up every single week, yet no decisions are being made. And every month that goes by, they're losing more and more money.
Yeah.
And so I think businesses have to be disciplined, whether they're using EOS or using scaling up or whatever meeting model they're using. They should be identifying these things, making decisions, verifying those decisions, and executing against those decisions quicker.
Yeah, if I was to highlight what you said, I'd circle that, bubble it up right away. Meetings without decisions are just expensive.
Yeah.
So why are we having a meeting if we're not going to make a decision? If we're walking out with maybes, and the only time that is no decision made is because we don't have enough information, but we got to set a deadline when we have to have that information to make the next decision.
Yeah.
Because if you say, well, let's wait and see what happens, well, that could be 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks. And by that time, your profit and people could be affected by that.
Well, and it's the decision, but then it's like, okay, now that we've made this decision, what's the action plan for the implementation
What's
of the decision?
to-dos?
And that seems to be a challenge for some people.
100%.
It's like, okay, we're going to make these adjustments. Great. By when and who's going to do what?
Absolutely.
And that's where a lot of that misses.
Yeah, I don't know how many times. Okay, what's the first domino? How many dominoes can we control right now? And when do these dominoes due by?
Yeah.
So we need to make this call. We need to let so-and-so know. We need to change this on the product line. It needs to be done by April 1st. And you're responsible. It's nothing until it's something. So to me, it's nothing until it has an actual action. It has somebody assigned to the action. And it has a date that action is due.
Yeah.
If those three things aren't there, it doesn't work.
Yeah, and indecision is really a decision in itself.
It is a worse decision, but it is
a worse decision. Yeah. Good. I love the model. It's great. I think it's a great framework. So again, low urgency, low stakes. Take initiative and decide on your own. Set up some parameters around with your teammates of like the Ritz-Carlton.
Yep.
You can spend X dollars to solve a problem, or you have the ability to do this to solve a problem. Low urgency, high stakes. Propose a plan, and then the leader. It's incumbent upon them to kind of dig into what that person thinks is the right way to go and why. High urgency, low stakes, monitor and report up as needed, and really have that RACI model in there to understand what you need, who's responsible, who's accountable, who needs to be consulted, and who needs to be informed. And then finally, on high stakes stuff and high urgency, bubble it up right away. Use the IDS methodology, decide what you're going to go do, and then create a clear plan to go implement it.
Love it. And if you just think about if you can take the next 2 weeks, and every time you go to make a decision or have a decision come to your desk, find out where that decision should plot on this plan, you'll find out where your leadership gap is. It'll clearly tell you where your leadership gap is.
Yeah, and one of the things, sorry to take this personal, but
it's all about you.
Into our personal lives, right? I'm sitting here playing this through too, where I'm seeing, like sometimes my kids, they're locked up in decision mode. And this is a great model and a great framework to just kind of teach very early on. And I find that with a lot of kids our age, our kids' age, where they just aren't taught a really good decision-making model, and they really don't know how to really think about things.
It's funny because one of the rules is to be a great entrepreneur, you need to be a great parent. So if you're practicing it at work, you should be practicing it at home. So if you're seeing your kids not making good decisions, I would actually ask yourself, are my team making good decisions? Because you run in parallel paths, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, 100%.